What's up, YouTube? Wolf190D back with some more Diablo 4. I've been toying around with Barbarians. I have a couple other characters that I've built, but nonetheless, I've kind of been focusing on my Barbarian builds mostly right now. Okay, so some tips, some tricks, things I've learned from other guys online, how to do early leveling. I'm going to try to do a quick run through on this dungeon and show you guys a little bit of how to work this guy to sort of ease some of the early frustrations I myself have had. So let's go ahead and get to the action. You'll notice that I'm trying to take out the little ranged guys first. And I'll show you my build here momentarily. And remember, this is early level stuff, so it's kind of basic, but nonetheless, we're gonna see if we can't efficiently get through this. So, crowd controlled. I'm gonna try to leave the commentary to a minimum here. Okay, there's that. And while I'm crawling through these dungeons, I do like to try to keep my potions topped off. So, you know, it's just another thought. Now, for those of you that can't see whatever, I know sometimes I watch these on my phone too, and I can't see some of this, what's going on. I am using the lunging strike as my primary resource generator. Now there's a couple of reasons for that, and I'll try to get into that after I get done with this here dungeon. Primary reason is to use the lunge ability to get out of really sticky situations. You'll notice I'm trying to dance between crowds of guys. I have tried the and I'm just picking up everything. I know. Low level barb. I'm just trying to run up some resources for it. So, oh wow, really? I just canceled myself from the boss fight. Oh boy. The lunge ability gives you sort of a second evade option, like a passive evade option. Gives you a passive evade option, and that's going to allow you to just sort of dance around and get out of really, really bad spots. Now, the leap ability, of course, is going to be a really good, really good fury generator for you early on. Give you ability to ramp up some more of that fury. And I'm just with this character, I'm just sticking mainly to the main storyline. What I do recommend though is if you're trying to level quickly, yes, do the main storyline, but any side quests that are sort of en route to your main quests, go ahead and pop those. You know, go ahead and do those because hey, they're on the way. It'll give you extra experience and it'll allow you to unlock some of that really good bonus stuff along the way, like extra skill points, extra potion capacity, things like that. So I'm going to try to kill this boss quickly. Yes, I'm not doing this as fast as probably some guys do, but I'm going to explain when I get done with this. I'll go back to town and I'll explain why this is sort of a stable leveling build. Like I said, I've fooled around with some other things with the barbarians early on. They just kind of don't work. So you'll notice that lunge attack, once you get within a certain range, you start to jump and you move rather quickly. Ow, that hurt. Oh, come on, buddy. There we go. All right. Grab stuff, top off potions, and I will go ahead and get out of here. And this will also give you an idea of, again, early low-level gameplay specifically for these barbarians. Oh, you know what I did? Oops. Yes, don't make that mistake, by the way. Hey, I'm human, folks. I make mistakes too. So, you get out there, and then you come back up. And this is the fledgling scholar quest specifically on the on Act 1 of the main storyline. I'm gonna go ahead and skip through all of that. All right, so let's go ahead and go back to town, and I'll explain some things that that I've found have been working for me. Now, again, there are differing thoughts. There are differing schools of thought for this. You get your whirlwind barbs. You get your hammer of the ancient barbs. But my specific build, I don't need to teleport. There we go. All right, so my specific build for this is going to be a Rend brawling barb. There's a lot of different ways, well, maybe not a lot of different ways, but there's some different ways you can do this. Early on, I had fooled around with the flay ability, but I was finding that it wasn't dealing enough direct damage. Yes, it does ramp up a lot of bleed damage, and then of course enhanced flay, it's going to extend your abilities, but I like this lunging strike, because again, it gives you sort of a passive almost evade ability. So instead of mashing the space bar to get out of bad situations and you know, have to wait for that to cool down, or have equipment, of course, that either cools it down, gives you extra charges, etc., etc. The lunging strike actually gives you the ability to hit opposing sides of large groups, and this is again for early on. I by no means have an end game build ready for anybody, but there you have it. So the lunging strike, really good for added mobility. Rend, of course, is going to be your primary damage dealer. Doesn't do a lot of upfront damage, but what it does, and as you level up, this stat does increase. And of course, the more points you invest into it, also the more damage it's going to do. I have a level 40 something barb that I'm really using as kind of an experiment barb to see what works and what doesn't work. But anyway, he does something like 1200 damage right now, and that's at level 42, I do believe. So what you're going to want to do, of course, is for your first two skills, do lunging strike, do enhanced lunging strike. I'm leaving one of these two for later. I haven't decided yet. On my other barb, I have done the battle lunging strike, which of course adds more bleed damage, which is going to stack with other skills later. But for now, this is just a rapid progression through your skill tree. And then of course, in order to get to the defensive skills, you need to put some points in the core skills. So you're going to go with Rend, you're going to go with enhanced Rend, because it extends the vulnerable duration on enemies, which is very nice. Of course, vulnerable enemies take 20% increased damage, so yeah, you kind of want that. Furious Rend, of course, is going to just be more resource generation. All right, 4 fury per every enemy hit. So if you hit a maximum of 5 enemies, I mean, of course, if you hit 10 enemies with Rend, you're still just going to get that 20 fury, but it's nice to generate more fury. I am using Pressure Point because it gives the core skills at maximum 30% to make enemies vulnerable per 2 seconds. So, of course, you build up fury, ramp up some fury, you slap them with Rend, and then, of course, it's going to have a chance anyway. 30%, it's better than nothing. It's definitely better than 10 or 20%. So each skill point's going to give you 10%. So if you pop vulnerable on him and then hit him with Rend again, because you do early on have enough fury to use Rend a couple of times anyway, 2 times at most. Of course, with this Furious Rend, you can sometimes get 3, maybe even 4 swings in. It depends on how big the crowd is. But you pop that vulnerable, and then of course your enhanced Rend, you hit him again, it's going to extend that. You go back to lunging strike, finish him off, whatever. And I'm using Endless Fury for this build, and I'm going to get into that momentarily. Well, specifically because my lunging strike, what I've done is I've set it to my two-handed slashing weapon. All right, and I'm going to explain some more on that here momentarily when I go to look at my gear. Well, actually, I don't need to go to look at my gear. So what I've done, and the reason I've done this is I've got my Rend set to use my two-handed slashings. Okay, Rend to use two-handed slashing weapons, and specifically what I'm sticking with are swords. All right, reasons for that, your what is it? Expertise, weapon expertise. All right, so this is going to revolve around using swords, and I'll kind of explain something about maces that I think is kind of cool later for those of you that aren't aware of it. But everybody probably watching this is aware that weapons, even if you're not using those weapons, the abilities that you get from them do stack. So interesting thoughts on that to come. So once you invest enough points in your core skills to unlock your defensive skills, you're going to go for Rallying Cry, and you're going to go for Enhanced Rallying Cry. Reason for that is, as well, if you're unstoppable, then the crowd control impairing effects are removed and prevented. You really want that. Not to mention, of course, Rallying Cry also gives you that increased movement speed and enhanced resource generation. So yeah, you're going to want those. Later on, I've tried this the strategic Rallying Cry. I have found that the Fortify it just doesn't do enough for the Barbarians. So a lot of stuff, and this probably carries over for other builds. I've heard other guys talk about this, other people talk about this, and through experience, trial and error, I have found that the resource generation abilities on your war cries, on your shouts, are going to be much more beneficial to your Barbarian. This is just what I've found through experience. Hey, disagree with me? We'll get a conversation going, the pros, the cons, etc., etc. I'm always looking to learn more. But anyway, eventually I'm going to invest into Tactical Rallying Cry, which when you pop Rallying Cry gives you 20 Fury, and while the War Cry is active, you get an additional 20% resource generation. So hey, more Fury means the more damage that you can unleash on your opponents. All right, coming up next, when you eventually get enough, and I'm just doing 1 point to each of these for now because I'm trying to get down to the weapon mastery, which I have unlocked, but I do not have enough skill level yet to put anything into it. So it's really all about investing in key abilities here to get down to here. And the advice consensus wise for this particular build is don't worry about these ultimates. Don't worry about the ultimate abilities. You're going to actually bypass those. So yeah, I know. Wrath of the Berserker is really nice. I haven't had a chance to use Iron Maelstrom. Call of the Ancients also is very, very nice skill. But for this particular build, and this will carry you pretty well up to level 50. I've been having pretty good success with my other Barbarian with this. Anyway, brawling skills. When you get down to brawling skills, you're going to want to unlock Leap first. It's going to improve your mobility. Not to mention, Leap has a really nice ability at the top of it where if Leap damages at least one enemy, you gain 40 Fury. Boom, right there. You're getting almost half of your base level Fury, right? So you're going to want to do that. Also, though, eventually you're going to want to do that. And again, it's all about resource generation. I don't think you need to do Mighty Leap per se, and I'll explain that in a moment. So for your other cry, you're going to do War Cry. War Cry increases damage for you and your allies. And then the nice thing about War Cry is when you get the enhanced War Cry, you get Berserking for 4 seconds. Berserking, of course, is going to increase your damage and movement speed. And then there's nice abilities that stack with that later. So there is that. And then I'm considering at some point maybe using Power War Cry. I haven't decided yet, but really you're quite all right. And I mean, again, 42 Barb, I haven't invested in any of the top levels for War Cry yet, right? So there is that. But the Berserking thing is really nice. And again, there's going to be synergies that go along with that. All right. For other abilities, though, you definitely want to go with Booming Voice. I have 1 point into that right now. Again, I've been trying to get down to Weapon Mastery to unlock a key ability there. Get into that here momentarily. But later, Raid Leader, very, very nice to invest into because you can heal up to 3% max life per second, and that's while your shouts now are active. Okay, so these passives for your shouts are great, and you have 2 shouts that you're going to work with here. So work on timing with those. You pop Rallying Cry. I tend to like to pop Rallying Cry first, simply because boom, you get resource generation. You can start ramping up that Rend, and then you can start doing things stacking on top of that. And then, of course, Warcry is really good, again, just simply for damage dealt. But also, you want this berserking, which is going to, drastically improve your combat abilities. All right. So these passive skills, yes, you're going to want to put some points into those. Obviously, with Booming Voice, you can increase your shout duration up to 24%. Right, 3% healing per second that it's active for Raid Leader, and then of course you can also cause your enemies to deal less damage with Guttural Yell. Some recommendations I've seen say put maybe 1 point into that. And again, this is going to be based on your personal play style. So if you're finding that your survivability is rather low, you could put more points into Guttering Yell. That would be really nice. And then also you have these other passive abilities down here. Aggressive resistance, you're going to want to invest into that. 3% damage reduction while berserking, so obviously at 3 skill points per, you're going to max that out at 9%. And of course, with your enhanced Warcry, you're going to gain, again, that damage buff while you're berserking. Battle Fervor. Battle Fervor, I'm not entirely sure about. You gain berserking for 1 second, so you get it for 3 seconds, and that's with brawling skills. So if Leap does any damage, you would get berserking off of that. Might be really nice. 1 point would be good into that, probably base level. And the reason for that is Unconstrained probably is about the most solid all-around key passive for this build. You could go with Gushing Wounds. Yeah, it would stack really well with a bleed build. Unbridled Rage, I'm not really sold on yet, and the reason for that is because at early levels I found that it's really, really hard to keep generating that fury. Obviously, your core skills, so that would be Whirlwind, Hammer of the Ancients, and of course Rend, which is going to be our primary combat ability. It's double the cost of fury. So can you really afford that? It's something to think about. And I mean, yeah, you're about level 35, I think, by the time you get down here. So it just depends on your build. It depends on the gear you find. It depends on the aspects that you've managed to accumulate and assemble. So anyway, Unconstrained probably is going to be a really solid, again, early level thing for this. And notice, please, it increases Berserk's max duration by 5 seconds, and it increases its damage bonus another 25%, right? So you're getting 50% more damage and 9 seconds worth of berserking every time you pop a Warcry. Now, if you were to use Battle Fervor and you do your leap attack into a crowd of enemies, you're getting that berserking for 1 second at the base level, 1 second, plus 5 seconds from that unconstrained passive. So you're looking at 6 seconds of berserk, right? If you've maxed out aggressive resistance, that's 9% damage reduction while berserking. Not to mention you have your increased damage by 50% and movement speed another 15%. So it's a thought. It's a thought. I haven't fully ironed all of this out yet. But anyway, when you get enough points into past brawling skills to unlock weapon mastery, you are going to want to go with Rupture for this build. You're going to want to go with Rupture. It's going to be like the first thing that you want to get. So once I level up to 15, I'm popping 1 skill to Rupture. Enhanced Rupture is really good because it gives you some crowd control ability. It gives you really solid crowd control ability. It's not like the most massive poison or blood nova explosion kind of thing, sorry, Blood Nova is a necromancer ability, but it does create this explosion that is going to further affect the entire crowd that you're in there dealing with. Definitely going to want to put points into Pit Fighter. Max this out. You get 9% increased damage to close enemies, and you gain another 6% damage to distant enemies. So those pesky archers that are constantly mowing you down, Pit Fighter is going to be really, really good to help out with that. No Mercy, I would invest in as well. Yes, I would invest in No Mercy as well, and I'll get to that momentarily, but it's going to have an increased critical strike chance against immobilized thunder slowed enemies, so up to 9%. Boom, right there. Exposed vulnerability also is going to be something that you want to put at least 2 points into. All right, 1 second's kind of not enough for this vulnerability, but the trick to this is that dealing direct damage with a weapon. So when you pop Rupture, right? When you pop Rupture, right? Your next Rend attack is going to make enemies vulnerable, right? And of course, after that, if you manage to hit them again with Rend, well, you're going to extend that vulnerable duration by another 2 seconds. So yeah, these are things that you're going to want to especially look at. All right, other things to do, and since we're bypassing the ultimate abilities, you're going to have points to go back and stack into all of these other things. So once you get 1 point into some of these key abilities down here, like Rupture, I would go with Enhanced Rupture for sure. I've done Fighter's Rupture, and yeah, it's nice, but this is really, really good. It stacks very well with the Berserking ability. It gives you another 20% to your attack speed, and of course that's going to affect, well, pretty much every attack that you do. So I personally prefer the Warrior's Rupture. Other abilities that you're going to want to invest in is Hamstring for sure. All right, at least 1 point to Hamstring. Bleeding affects slow enemies. And notice, slowed enemies are more vulnerable to your No Mercy ability. So yes, you're going to want to do that. And then of course, Cut to the Bone. Cut to the Bone is great because, hey, if you're stacking up all of these vulnerabilities and, you know, all of your opponents are vulnerable, bleeding effects deal 6% increased damage to vulnerable enemies. Definitely going to want to pump into Cut to the Bone, so you can get that up to 18%. Right? So yes, definitely do that. Thick Skin, I haven't fooled around with this down here again and again. Fortify, I just haven't seen much of a bonus or much of an effect off of the Fortify ability. So I tend to avoid that personally, right? Oh, there's the increase the maximum fury. So you could, once you start getting a high enough level, you could start to put into Tempered Fury. You could start to do that. Tempered Fury would be really good. Furious Impulse, if you're swapping weapons a lot, yeah, this would also be probably a really good thing to have. And then, of course, Invigorating Fury. 100 Fury, yeah, you know, you could invest in Invigorating Fury with this build as well. It just depends on your skill points, how far along you are. The point is that with this, early on, try to get down to this unconstrained as quickly as you can. So these are things for consideration. Now, on to the equipment. All right, and these are some free floating thoughts on equipment. Don't judge me. This is a brand new build. I'm just starting to fool around with some stuff on this. So things to consider for builds. Max Life is always really nice. I haven't found a better helm yet. I mean, I have this one here that does cold resistance, but I guess I'm just preferring to put in a Max Life. It's one more hit point. I might survive a killing blow. So I'm going to leave that on that. As you can see, I'm using the two-handed swords, and I'm using the two-handed sword and the two single-hand swords. Reasons for that, and first and foremost, look at the abilities. Do not, and I repeat, do not. I made this mistake myself. Do not simply swap a weapon because it has better item power, right? Or because it deals, you know, a little bit more damage per second. I mean, within reason. Come on. If it's like a plus 50 to the item power or something like that, then you might consider it. But if your the abilities that the items grant are going to stack well with what you're doing, then keep those. So this two-handed bludgeoning, I'm not even using this, but it does grant me an extra 6% damage to close enemies. So I'm keeping that over, say, maybe this one. Well, that one does 4% damage over time. Could consider that. This one, though, probably not going to swap over to that. First of all, I'm not using the weapon, but second of all, this is giving me an extra 6% damage to close enemies. Barbarians aren't ranged characters, guys. Everything that they do is going to be close quarters attacks. So, yes, if you find a mace or something that you can stick in this that does something that boosts your damage or your attack speed or anything like that, hey, hang on to it. Put it in there, even if you're not using it. So anyway, for my short swords, again, 2.5% damage to close enemies, but also I have another one that does 2% to core skill damage, which of course is going to be your Rend. More damage on Rend. Hey, that sounds pretty tasty, doesn't it? So yes, damage, critical strikes, anything that improves your ability to output damage more quickly. It's going to help the Barbarian builds. And for my two-handed sword, this one does 33.6% basic skill damage. Now, it's been upgraded twice, so that's not its base stat, but nonetheless, it's increasing the basic skill damage, which is the lunging strike. All right, so let me explain a little something about why I'm doing what I'm doing with my skills. You can see here, I have my lunging strike set to two-handed sword, and I have my Rend set to my single-hand swords. Yes, I'm suffering a little bit of damage loss on Rend. There is that, but the reason for that is when you unlock your expertises, you'll notice something. All right, with two-handed swords, or one-handed swords rather, one-handed, and this is why I'm trying to set this up like this, because ultimately I think what I'm going to do is convert this into a whirlwind build, there's some really solid ideas behind this. So. One-handed sword expertise, up to 2% chance to gain 5 fury when hitting a crowd-controlled enemy. And you double that when you're using 2. So if you have 2 swords, you're getting, at rank 2, mind you, at rank 2, you're getting 4% chance to gain 5 more fury. So hey, resource generation. I can't stress that enough. That's probably the one glaring weakness of the Barbarian builds is that they have to generate fury. They have to get steam rolling, before they can really start to do anything. So, yeah, this might be and it's something that somebody else pointed out, and I'm really looking forward to toying around with this. But anyway, 2% chance to gain 5 fury, and also remember, I'm using this. I have manually set this to my Rend. All right, manually set this to my Rend. Now, how do you do that, actually? How do you do that? If you go down to skill assignment, for those of you that don't know, if you go down to your skill assignments, you can come into, go into your skill tree, open up skill assignments, all right? Go down to your ability, and if you click the middle button on the mouse, click the middle button, don't roll it, click it, all right? You're actually able to switch, right? So see, this is on auto select now. This is on dual wield. This is on bludgeoning, and then I've got it manually set to two-hand slicing. My Rend is set to this. The reason I've done that, all right? The reason I've done that is because of these expertises, all right? I'm trying to stack up abilities on my one-handed swords. So there again, every time I hit enemies with my Rend, right now I have up to 2% chance to gain 5 fury when hitting crowd controlled enemies. Enemies that are bleeding are crowd controlled. Okay, they're crowd controlled. Now for the other one, the two-handed sword, 4% direct damage you deal is inflicted as bleed damage over 5 seconds, right? So the two-handed swords, it's a flat extra bleed damage, which is also going to stack with the ability that we're using with it, which is the lunging strike, right? So 4% is 61. I don't know if you want to do the math, then go for it. But as this levels up, you're going to come up to something like, let me see here, it goes 2, 4, 6. So you're going to look at 20%. I do believe if this carries through, 20% at rank 10. 20% of your direct damage with your two-handed sword is going to cause bleed. Ooh, and that's going to stack with all the other bleed abilities that you've been stacking up, like the hamstring and the cut to the bone and stuff like that. And at rank 10, you get an additional bonus. You deal 30% increased bleed damage for 5 seconds after killing an enemy. So, yeah, the two-handed swords at rank 10 is probably going to stack really, really nice with a whirlwind build. Now, what I've seen with that whirlwind build, do not do the bleeding whirlwind. Don't do the bleed whirlwind. I mean, you can. I've toyed around with it. It's rather effective, especially if you want some guaranteed bleed damage. But there again, if you're ranking up your two-handed swords, you're going to get guaranteed bleed damage. So it's kind of irrelevant. But nonetheless, thoughts, comments. Hey, let's get a discussion going. I'd like to hear from more experienced people, particularly. So those bleed damages are going to stack really, really nicely with these passive abilities. Plus, this is going to ramp up with No Mercy because it gives you increased critical strike chance, which is just going to allow you to kill people faster, right? So the Violent Whirlwind actually is going to be probably the nicest ultimate for that. So again, this is a bleed brawl Barbarian build for early leveling. Some people say you can use it up to level 50. I've heard other people say that it's even a decent end game build. I haven't gotten to the end game yet, so don't know. But anyway, thanks for stopping by, folks. As always, be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.